4-H in Wyoming. It's not just about cows and clothing. Next on Wyoming Chronicle. 4-H is a national youth development program that has been in existence for over 100 years, and its history runs deep in Wyoming. With programs in all 23 counties, the primary goal of 4-H is to assist youth in developing life skills that help them live productive and satisfying lives. Skills such as making decisions, solving problems, relating to others, planning and organizing, and applying science and technology are all part of 4-H. The biggest myth about 4-H is that it's not just for farm kids. And it's not just for kids. There are ample opportunities for adults to contribute to 4-H in Wyoming regardless of whether their own children participate in the program. The curriculum offered by 4-H programs are staggering. There is truly something for everyone. Being part of a 4-H club is the most meaningful way to participate in 4-H. Youth can also be involved in special interest programs as well as school enrichment and mentoring programs sponsored by 4-H. As we'll learn in our panel discussion, your involvement in 4-H is just a phone call away to your University of Wyoming Extension agent. And we're pleased to be joined on the Wyoming Chronicle set by 4-H experts here in the state of Wyoming. With us today are Tansey Sussex, a UW a 4-H leader, educator from Laramie County. Tansey, welcome. And Don Sanchez, a UW 4-H educator from Uinta County. Don, welcome. And also really the leader of 4-H in Wyoming, Johnathan Despain. Johnathan, welcome to Wyoming Chronicle. And I want to start with you. What is the status of 4-H in Wyoming? Maybe start with a little bit of history, how from a global perspective of how things are today, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of 4-H in Wyoming.
That sounds good. Well, first, thanks for having us here, Craig, today. We're grateful to be able to talk about the 4-H program as we're all very passionate about it. The 4-H program started with the Smith-Lever Act passed by U.S. Congress in 1902, and it's a partnership between the federal government and state governments and county governments to fund a youth development program. And so really it started with traditional corn clubs and agriculture-related projects where young people tried to get together with adults to be able to transfer technology. It started around genetics around corn is where it really started with, and trying to help their parents do a better job in production agriculture. Over the years, again, it's been 100 years. It started in Wyoming in 1904, so just 2 years later, and last year we finished celebrating our 100th year of 4-H in Wyoming with a big celebration at the State Fair.
Is 4-H available in all Wyoming counties?
Yes, the 4-H program is available in every Wyoming county. The state of Wyoming, through the College of Ag and Cooperative Extension, has an arrangement with all the county commissions to help fund the 4-H program in every county. So there's a colleague of ours in every county that directs the 4-H program there and works with the local personnel.
And that's through the UW Extension,
yes.
Extension Department of the University of Wyoming, through the Department of Agriculture?
Yeah, it's through the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources, okay, and through Extension, which is housed within the College of Ag.
Okay, Tansey, you're in the largest county in Wyoming. What's the makeup of kids who participate in 4-H in Laramie County?
So we have a lot of traditional kids too, because our county is very varied. So we have the city kids, and then we have a lot of kids in our fringe area. So we have the farm kids as well. So I would say it's probably around probably close to 50-50 actually. We have a lot of kids that are still in those traditional projects out of town, but we're really trying to hit more of the city kids as well.
And you, Don, you and Tansey both work directly with volunteers and 4-H participants, kids, if you will. Is that your and tell me what is the biggest barrier? We'll start there with kids in Wyoming either not knowing what 4-H is or wanting to participate but maybe can't. What are the barriers to participation in 4-H?
I think one of the biggest barriers is competition for time. There's so many activities for kids to be in that they're really split up on their time, and I think that's one of our biggest issues.
Why should a Wyoming youth participate in 4-H?
Well, 4-H is a youth development program that offers opportunities beyond the school environment that oftentimes can appeal to kids that have different learning techniques, as well as the fact that maybe they have an interest that they get the opportunity to build on. So it's a self-driven program that allows them to set their own goals, and then they have the ability to build upon things that they have an interest in that maybe those needs aren't necessarily being met within the school system or within their family environments or things like that. So it's really, it's an individualized type program that is supported by a fabulous base of volunteers that are there to support and provide opportunities for those kids.
My experience with 4-H is going to the fair and watching the ag kids do their thing with horses, with pigs, with cows, and that kind of stuff. It's so much more than that. Why hasn't that word gotten out, Johnathan?
Well, a variety of things. I think first and foremost, it's hard to live in a rural state where agriculture is so important to our main state and so many young people are involved in agriculture from small operations, not to see the transition outside of that. So it will always be a part of our program. It is a mainstay part of our program. So to get other people to see it differently is a challenging at times. When our main public event, if you want to see that, is the county fair, and it has 100-year history of opportunities of competition in animals. That's the kind of always been that first foremost opportunity for young people to see themselves. So word of mouth behind the scenes always has been well, if you don't have an animal, then it's only for those ag kids that live on farms and not for our urban situation or suburban type young people. And it's not. It's never has been the case, but they tend to think that if you didn't have an animal, there wasn't a place for you.
Was there a golden age in Wyoming, if you will, of 4-H participation? Are we in it now? Are we trying to get back to a place perhaps where it was more top of mind for youth in Wyoming?
Numerically speaking, I think our statistics would show from an enrollment standpoint that it's been pretty steady over the years. Even with the ups and downs of the population in Wyoming, we've stayed pretty steady. About a little over 10% of the population are involved in our 4-H program, and we reach about 1 in 5 kids in some educational construct. So there's the club side of our program where kids and parents can enroll their children to engage in our clubs, over 600 clubs around the state. And then there's the after-school, school enrichment, camping, other settings that we provide lots of educational opportunities, but those are more episodic or individualized around topics.
I would assume some counties have more interest in 4-H than others. Is that an accurate statement, or is it pretty level across the state of Wyoming?
I would say it's pretty level, and you know our colleagues as well. It's in every county, and it's pretty well represented as far as that goes. I think it varies a limit with the interests of the young people at the time and the volunteers in the community as to what sort of projects. When a young person signs up, Craig, in the 4-H program, parents get a look at this variety of projects, over 60 plus kind of areas. We call them projects. So there's things from raising animals to photography, woodworking, leathercraft, entomology, areas of interest, and they pick those projects. So the matching process of volunteers to those young people happens, and our educators spend a lot of that time helping those volunteers get connected with them.
So you don't need to know necessarily a person in a club. You can go at a higher level, say, I am interested in working with leather or in woodwork or in dog obedience, and then is it your job to then help them find the right club in their area to participate in 4-H?
Yeah, we try and find a leader or a club that's going to be a good fit for them, and sometimes we do have leaders or projects that we don't have leaders for, and so then we have these wonderful curriculums that the kids can kind of self-teach themselves, and the parents can help them with that. And so even if we don't have a leader or a club working necessarily in that project area, those kids can still be involved.
So literally any youth in Wyoming, the ages are what to what?
5 to 18.
5 to 18. If I learn what a project is, I can participate, even if I'm maybe in an area where there isn't a group or a group of a leader even assigned for that particular project.
Yeah, I think that our role as educators is that to build upon that volunteer base, to try to find those volunteers to match up to it. But it's a cyclic. I mean, with any county, with any project areas, some years we'll have a lot of kids enrolled in cake decorating. The next year it'll build because we have a support base, we'll get a lot of kids in robotics. Or, I mean, I think the consistency is our agriculture-based projects. Those are consistent, and I think with that is that we're able to build upon those non-traditional areas based on volunteers and their ability to connect and spend time with kids.
Even in non-traditional projects, does it still culminate with the county fair? Is that necessarily a part or not?
I would say no, because of the fact that over the 4-H in Wyoming, at least, is that we've added additional opportunities for those kids to engage upon. I mean, one of the other major events that we hold during the summer month is something called Showdown, and it's a time when we highlight and provide opportunities for those kids in a variety of opportunities to come in a hands-on method and share their expertise. So at that event is we've added a lot of new events over the course of the last few years, including such things as there's a robotics contest where kids come in and have sumo robots, or they program NXTs to do mazes. So that builds upon their opportunity to come showcase that. So they may participate in Showcase Showdown and never come to County Fair. So County Fair is one big opportunity that is a huge positive part of our program, but there's other opportunities for those kids. So that Showcase Showdown is a huge opportunity for those kids, as far as we have food cook-off where teams come together and they actually are given an hour to present a dish to the judges, and so it's a different method of hands-on application where they get to apply what they've learned back home.
Is 4-H concerned about retention of kids once they enter a program? In other words, if I'm a parent and my son or daughter enters as a first or second grader when they're young, is it the goal to really keep active and in touch with that kid clear until they graduate from high school?
Absolutely, but it's not from the perspective of financial reasons of trying to grow the program so we can say we just have more young people. It's because we're research-based, being part of the academic institution at the University of Wyoming. We know best practices related to the research, which are over long periods of time, the more opportunities young people engage and gain these skill sets in their lives, then they become more productive adults. And we know the research related to that. And because of that, we know from a retention aspect that the longer we can keep young people in our program, the less likely they are to be engaged in risky behaviors, the better they do in school. Right now, some of our latest evaluation research show that young people that are in our program for more than 3 years are twice as likely to study STEM-related projects and go pursue careers. Things like that come out because our outcomes of our project are based on multiple experiences over a long period of time. If you hit somebody that's a 6-year-old and they get this set of experiences, it's very different to then hit a similar experiences but in a different context with different people, different adult volunteers 5 years later, and then 5 years later as well.
The question would become, why isn't every kid involved in 4-H then? Is it just time, or is it truly it's just a matter of getting the word out even more than has been, even though we are this rural state where we all know the letters 4-H, but may not necessarily know the next step?
Yeah, that's a great question. We ask that all the time. If you know the program, everybody keeps saying it's the best known secret. It's been around for 100 years. How come every child's not in it? We wonder the same thing being in it. I believe it's a few things. It's a variety of factors. I don't think we can pinpoint just some specific ones. We do take a hard look at our retention issues, trying to figure out what the barriers are for young people participating, and we know some of those. As was mentioned earlier in conversations, we were talking about the time commitment. Because it's a lack of a number of opportunities in our club perspective of it, it can be viewed as you need to do a lot of things to participate, so it's engagement by parents and families for a lot of time, and there's competing interests for their time. So that's one piece to it. There are financial barriers to it to some regards because you pick a project.
Let's talk about that. I'm really curious as to what the financial commitments are to someone. It's probably different by project. Who's responsible for the financial requirements to participate in 4-H?
Do you want me to take that? Yeah, it hinges on the families for the first part, but it does depend on your project. If you want to learn about animals and you want to learn hands-on the way we do in 4-H, we encourage you to buy a sheep or buy a goat and then learn with that animal, with the fair and all those experiences in tow with that. If you're going to learn about robotics, there may be some resources to do some group components together, but the onus to learn is still on you and the family to buy some of those resources to do that.
Not necessarily the volunteer as the leader, but the participants.
The participants themselves. Mm-hmm. And how we're funded is a joint model between federal, state, and county dollars. And honestly, over the years, we've barely been able to keep above float for keeping employees in place. So most of them, we fundraise consistently. We hate fundraising as a way to have to maintain the program, but without those funds, we don't offer opportunities for kids to go to camp or reduce costs for the materials for volunteers to teach kids robotic, and we have to pass those costs on.
So there might be, depending upon your fundraising success, opportunities for people to get financial support, and they should ask. Is that
absolutely?
And then the resources may be there or they may not be there.
We would never turn a child away from participating in the program at all. We never would. It's just about the opportunities within them, and that's why we fundraise, is to make sure that every child has the opportunities. They may not be able to engage in the program fully. We can't provide a beef that's for every child, but we can find projects and try and get them resourced to have a positive experience within the program.
Issues like transportation, are those issues, a single parent family with maybe mom or dad's time, all those things that impact everything else, impact 4-H participation as well? And have you seen those issues?
Absolutely. We'd like to say that that's not an issue in the state of Wyoming because we're little and we're rural and our communities are small. But honestly, I live in a very small county, but it is a huge issue. It's a huge issue to get them to wherever the meeting places is. I mean, oftentimes we have great success when we have the opportunity to hold events at schools or community type locations where kids can walk or ride bikes or things like that. But that's not always the case. And so I think you're exactly right. The transportation is an issue out there that maybe is a barrier that is a challenge.
Is 4-H more standalone, or does it work to really create partnerships with other entities that exist, schools, Boys and Girls Club, other entities that are out there? How are those partnerships cultivated?
I think that it depends on the community and what resources they have available. So some of our communities have after-school programs that really work hard to partner with their schools. They're in there.
The 4-H
they have
programs
right,
work hard.
And so they have a good relationship. Not every community has that opportunity. Not every community has a Boys and Girls Club. So it's just kind of hit or miss on what is offered and what partnerships are able to be made within a community.
We try really hard, though, to do that. And we view our educators as resources in the community around positive youth development principles and applications, and we want those best practices applied. So the best way to do that is to partner with other youth-serving organizations to be able to train and provide resources. This week, we were providing a training for after-school providers, 21st century after-school providers on ages and stages and best practices of youth development programs to help them. We have partnerships. You have a partnership in Uinta County, Dawn, that's very unique with the juvenile justice system. We have a mentoring program in 3 counties as part of the Office of Juvenile Justice doing a mentoring program. We have a partnership with the Air Force Base and an employee that works part-time on the Air Force Base. A lot of partnerships happen locally, be able to provide the best resources for the young people in every community.
We talked about young people for a good portion of time today. I want to talk about the volunteer part. Your mission, I found engaging, or interesting. Engaging youth to reach their fullest potential, I understand that, but it surprised me, the second half of your mission is while advancing the field of youth development. To me, that's about understanding the science, as you talked about a little bit earlier, of understanding how important youth development is. Talk about that component of the mission.
Well, there's colleagues like us at every land-grant institution around the country, so we have a pretty strong network of professionals, of youth development professionals around the country. The field of youth development's probably only been around for about 20 years. Prior to that, it was just viewed as education in general. Teacher's a teacher. But what we know from non-formal education and learning environments, the research shows that there are experiences that young people have to be successful adults. So it's all about helping them reach maturity and be successful, contributing adults. So for example, we know that young people need to feel a sense of belonging to be a successful adult. Well, how do you do that? And how do you measure that? And how do you gauge that? Those are some of the questions that we try and tackle. But we know they need that. So the research shows that we need to figure out how to do that. One way we do that is through clubs, through opportunities for young people to feel appreciated by a group around their same project area, mentoring relationships with adults as examples. We also know that they need a sense of independence. So we want to make sure that we're creating opportunities for young people to set self-goals and work towards those goals. We know that young people to become successful adults need a sense of generosity. We know that they need a sense of mastery. So those are the 4 big ones. We call them the big M. Those are the 4 kind of core areas that we try and ensure that young people have the opportunity to do that. But to be successful in our program, we have to help our volunteer leaders understand that and have the best resources and tools to reinforce and help those opportunities happen.
So how do you recruit? How do you let folks know it's great to be a 4-H leader and why it's so important to be a volunteer? What's your message?
I think that our volunteers have a unique opportunity to really impact these kids long term. And we really, even though they're doing project specific things, so a volunteer might have a very specific interest level, they're really focusing on those life skills that are going to come out many years later. And so I think it's easy to say, I'm going to do this quick activity, maybe a 6-week class on cake decorating, but really those volunteers, even though they might not realize it, are really having a long-term impact on those kids.
The other part of that is that I think it's a message that we give to our volunteers. Society today is definitely different than it was when 4-H started 100 years ago, and I think it's our job as educators, as other peers that are volunteers in our program, our youth, to help adults recognize that there's a place for everybody. If an individual only has an hour to donate, then great, we want you. Come find a home and we'll use your expertise and apply that. However, and if you're an individual that has a whole lot more time, 10 hours in a month that you want to come and contribute to our program, then we'll take you too. So I think that's a message that I think is critically important, that it's a perception. Maybe sometimes I don't want to volunteer for the 4-H program because it's so many hours and I have to give so much, but there's an opportunity, just like we said with kids, is we're not going to turn kids away. There's an opportunity for every kid. I think there's an opportunity for every adult to also be a volunteer in our program.
And we're not just talking about adults who have children of age.
Oh, absolutely not.
So there are leaders, plenty of leaders in Wyoming who might be, grandparents, for
Absolutely.
example, or maybe not have any kids at all, just want to share their skills
Their
or their
time.
experience and their time.
Absolutely.
So let's say I'm one of those people. What should I do? I've never been involved with 4-H before. I've never been an educator before. I don't know what to do. So what should I do?
I would say, the biggest part is hopefully they're going to get a connection to our extension office, and then that's where we come into play. That's our role to sit down with them and identify where their strengths are, what do they want to get from the program, but also what do they have. All of us have hidden secrets out there, or talents or things that we have the ability to share with kids, and whether it's time or whether it's some specific project, is that then hopefully we'll have the ability to match them up to where they can utilize their expertise, their time in the most efficient way to reach our kids. And we also provide them the opportunity for training. As far as that concept is
Like
that
orientation style?
yeah,
or?
absolutely. So once they match up with us, it's a process that they go through to become an official volunteer that hopefully is a painless process that we can help them to walk through, and that includes a screening process that is for the safety of our children, which is pretty simple. And then there's a training concept that we help them work through, and then we obviously would place them in whatever situation or environment they would like to volunteer in.
I'm glad you mentioned the screening process. It's something that was on my mind, that our society today is a little different perhaps than it was 20 or 30 years ago. What is that process? If I'm considering to be a volunteer, really what should I expect to go through in order to qualify myself, if you will?
Yeah, actually it's one of the things we're pretty proud of in Wyoming, that some of our predecessors were well ahead of the curve in terms of youth protection issues for our young people. We've been doing it for over 25 years of screening our volunteers at a higher level than probably most other states for a long period of time. Currently the process is that the university has a background screening contract, for lack of better words, with a company that we use. And so when a volunteer comes in, they fill out information about themselves, and then it goes through that process with that company, similar to what employee background checks would do through some of these companies. So it's a social security trace check to figure out criminal actions, and then also behavior. They release their criminal records to us so we can figure out the best fit. And then we work with the risk management office, and myself and our office, and Kim Riemann, who is our volunteer development specialist, to get the best fit for them. If they need some restrictions to try and make that fit, we try and help that happen.
Just real quickly, a general idea on the number of volunteers who give their time in Wyoming to 4-H. Do we have?
Yeah, right now I think our last number was a little over 3,000 volunteers. We've got a little over 7,000 kids in our club program, which is our long club program. And we reached a little over 19,000 kids in either school enrichment, and including those 7,000. So there's about 92,000, I think was the last number I saw, of kids that are age eligible to be in our program. So there's lots of room for growth as far as that goes too.
Again, if I want to be a volunteer, but I might be afraid I'm not sure how to communicate anymore with a middle school person in this digital and social media age, or a high school person. Help is available there as well? Yep. Are those barriers for some folks who are just kind of scared because they don't understand, for lack of a better term, kids these days?
I think so. We were just having this conversation last week that the availability of information to our kids is so quick that it's really easy for our kids to sometimes outlearn our volunteers. And so our volunteers feel uncomfortable with that. So we really work with them to try and teach them how to teach the kids at the kids' pace, even though it might not be a topic that the kid may have surpassed their knowledge level, but they can still help the kid and mentor the kids.
We have a couple minutes left. I want to go around the room. We'll start with you, Johnathan. What I wish Wyoming stood about 4-H is?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that it's for every young person, that it's a program that every parent can engage their children into, and then by doing so over a period of time, it makes an impact. We know it makes a difference. The research shows it makes a difference, and I think if best practice were applied, more parents would have their kids in the program. And then my other pitch would be and we need more funding.
Okay.
I think everybody throws those in.
And we'll talk about that just at the very end. Tansey.
I think my biggest thing would be that we have such a wide variety of opportunities for youth that just because maybe they were familiar with 4-H 20 years ago, our program has expanded so much that there's an opportunity for every kid to be involved in some way. And the same with volunteers, that we always need more volunteers. That really is the only way we can run this program. And so I think there's just lots of opportunities, and if you have any interest, just come and talk to us and let us know.
And this is in the phone book, any University of Wyoming County agent, correct? Don, what would you say?
I think that that we would hope that they look past the stigma that's placed on it, and the concept that we would like to provide a positive opportunity for kids to connect with an adult, and that can be based around a self-driven, goal-oriented of what the kid has an interest in, and then we'll help build upon that. So,
real quickly, fundraising. We've talked about it periodically throughout the evening. How big of an issue is it in Wyoming compared to maybe other states?
Actually, we're lucky. We're pretty stable. Our strategic plan put us to be able to have a 4-H educator in every county to support the program. So we're ahead of other states as far as that goes, and we can thank the Wyoming State Legislature for that through the block grant with the university. But we're also at a stagnant point. Unless more resources are put into it, it's not going to be able to grow much beyond where it's at now. And I think we need more employees, we need more resources to be able to grow that program. When you have we always use an analogy of a school district. When you have one employee in Laramie County who's overseeing 700 kids, 30 plus clubs, and a few hundred volunteers, that's very difficult to be able to manage that effectively.
Despain, Tansey, Sussex, and Don Sanchez, thank you so much for joining us today on Wyoming Chronicle and talking about 4-H in Wyoming.
Thank you, Craig.